Hi, everybody. This is Hermela Aragawi of EOAnews.com and on YouTube.com/Hermela TV. This video will walk you through how to become a patron of my Patreon account. It's a subscription model. NPR and other publicly funded news outlets use a model like this. It allows the company, the entity, to stay as independent as possible by being viewer funded. So I'll walk you through how to go to patreon.com/Hermela TV, sign up, and then become a monthly member. You'll first go to your browser on your phone or laptop and type in patreon.com/Hermela TV, patreon.com/Hermela TV. This is what the page will look like. You'll then click here where it says become a member. Then it will take you to a sign up page where you'll create a Patreon account that will require your name, your email address, and your new password for this account. So it will then either take you back to this page where you can click become a patron again, or it's possible it will take you to this landing page where on the left side you'll see the option for find creators. Click on that, and in the search box type Hermela TV. My account will show up, then it'll take you to this page. It will default to a monthly contribution of $5, but you can change that to whatever amount you would like. Here are two common issues that people run into. It may ask you for your state, country, and zip code. If it does that, just enter the information and continue on. You also have to go to the email of the email address you used for sign up and verify your account. So go to your email. You'll have gotten an email from Patreon. You have to click verify email address and then return to the browser where you are signing up. Then you will enter your credit card info and click on pay with card, and that's it. And please make sure you pass it around to your friends and family members that you know are interested in supporting independent journalism, particularly independent journalism that tells stories out of Africa from the perspective of the African people. I know a lot of us in Ethiopia, Eritrea, the Horn are celebrating the peace deal that was agreed to last week, but the disinformation in an effort to divide is not going to stop. In fact, we are seeing indications that it is ramping up. So we need to build these independent outlets. We need to scale up. Most of the production that you guys see on my YouTube channel is done by a production team of one, and we can't keep that going for much longer. So we need to hire some editors, some writers, and we need to hire good ones that are, if they don't already understand the general style of news out of Africa and what to look out for, they need to be trained, and we need to get at least part-time people in here, but also full-time to really be able to keep up with the daily news. And hope to see you on patreon.com/Hermela TV.
Welcome to EOA News in collaboration with Hager Media. I'm Hermela Aragawi. Many Ethiopians and Eritreans in Canada are outraged with what they say is the bias and selective outrage of some members of parliament when it comes to the conflict in northern Ethiopia. The conflict is between the Ethiopian government and armed members of the previous 27-year regime known as the TPLF, the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Late last month, there was a hearing before the Subcommittee on Human Rights, and here's Dr. Tuhut Asfaw of ECNAS, the Ethio-Canadian Network for Advocacy and Support, speaking before Canadian Parliament.
The immense suffering of Ethiopians can be laid at the feet of the TPLF. For 27 years, it ruled the country through terror, committed atrocities throughout the country, and never held a free and fair election. It is a deposed and aggrieved former political party that launched terrorist attacks on the state and has been engaged in a well-resourced and long-planned insurgency and disinformation war. We would like to offer the following recommendations for your consideration. 1. Redesignate TPLF as a terrorist group. Before this conflict, the US and Canada rightfully considered it a terrorist organization. There are numerous pieces of evidence TPLF committing terrorist acts such as torture, sexual violence, and murder of civilians as well as soldiers. TPLF spokesperson even admitted on regional television that its forces attacked federal military outposts and thousands of national troops on November 3rd and 4th, 2020. 2. Send a delegation to Ethiopia to assess the issues of the ongoing conflict with first-hand evidence. If you check news articles before 2020, you will find credible reports of how the TPLF embezzled millions of dollars in aid from the Ethiopian people. They have used some of these stolen funds to run their propaganda campaign and bribe members of Congress, of which there is proof. For a proper evidence-based account, we recommend the committee refer to the articles of Professor Anne Fitzgerald of the Balsillie School of International Affairs. 3. Canadian constitutional experts should support the review of Ethiopia's constitution to help ameliorate ethnic tensions. The TPLF ratified a constitution in 1994 that has been compared by some to apartheid in South Africa. It sowed the seeds of discontent and has inspired horrible ethnic divisions. Canada could help enormously by supporting a new draft of a constitution that recognizes individual rights, regardless of tribe or ethnicity.
Joining me now to discuss is Dr. Tut Asfaw of ECNES and Lambros Kyriakakos of SECO, the Coalition of Eritrean Canadian Communities and Organizations. Thank you both for making the time. So that hearing was the third of a series of hearings, the first being in June. Neither one of your organizations and the voices they represent were included in the first two hearings. So Dr. Tut, I'll start with you. What was the process of getting into that room?
So the hearing was initiated as a result of a motion adopted by the subcommittee on April 26, 2022, that one meeting be dedicated to an update on the current situation in Tigray. The first hearing was held on June 21st, and TPLF supporters were given the whole hearing time and presented their cases through 4 witnesses. And Parliament was on recess until September, so it got discontinued. In September, we learned about this hearing and sent an email to the clerk. We provided a brief that outlines our position, which is now available on their website. We were then invited to testify, but we were not invited to the second hearing, which took place on October 21st. Again, at the October 21st hearing, TPLF supporters were given the whole time, and they brought 4 witnesses. We were invited to the last hearing that took place on October 28th, and to our surprise, they have brought in some of the previous witnesses as well as the new ones, and a total of 11 witnesses were invited. It appeared as though the subcommittee was under pressure to add more people from the TPLF side, including an international witness from Geneva, Mukesh Kapila, who is a known TPLF supporter and known also for posting anti-Ethiopia rhetoric. I think we'll come to the details later.
And so Lambros, let me go to you. SECO was also a part of that hearing. The organization has done a lot of work when it comes to education on the TPLF, the Tigray People's Liberation Front. You followed up, the organization rather, followed up on that hearing, expressing deep disappointment of the committee's biased and selective outrage of the current situation in Tigray, according to the letter. What points were you presenting in that parliament, and how were they received?
On June 3rd, Checo had provided a testimony to the same committee, the SDRI, and brought to their attention the precarious situation in the Horn of Africa, and particularly the non-implementation of the EEBC decision. I will summarize that position with the words of the Honorable Lloyd Axworthy. The lack of resolution of the conflict is such a large and powerful force that impedes all efforts, whether it's human rights improvement or poverty reduction or agricultural reform. It's like a big 800-pound gorilla that's sitting there and you can't just get around it. Until the conflict itself is resolved, any efforts in these other areas, I think, would be severely impeded. So we had brought to the attention of the committee that this was a dangerous precedent and it was remaining a constant threat to Eritrea's independence, freedom, and human rights. And the non-compliance with international law was also posing a threat for peace and security in the region. So our appearance on the 28th of October, although we tried several times to appear to the committee, it comes to complement to the position that Eritrea and Eritreans in the diaspora were always looking for a window of opportunity for peace with Ethiopia. That came in 2019 when Abiy came, and we all celebrated it. So what we noticed is that the committee was totally avoiding the existence of that window of peace in the Horn of Africa, and was judging the situation from a very narrow window of very biased position. And that's how we realized that from the very beginning, the setting was against hearing voices of truth.
I want to get more information on the setting. Dr. Tooth, I'll come to you, and I want to get your perspective on it too. Lambros, what was the environment? Was it, I believe you mentioned there appeared to be just personal relationship between TPLF activists or supporters in parliament and some parliament members. What did that look like?
The whole environment was very negative and very hostile, and so many things went wrong right from the outset. The hearing began with a negative tone, which puts us in a situation where we felt very unsafe to express our views or the facts as we know them. One of the MPs suggested in the beginning to cancel the hearing, indicating that she has received a letter from one of the witness organizations that there are individuals or organizations that are engaged in hate speech, and they felt like it's not a safe environment for them to appear in the hearing. So that was very shocking for us, because we know that's not true. It's a tactic they have used since the beginning to silence pro-Ethiopia voices. It was obvious some of the MPs have also already made up their mind. It was clear. So no matter what we said, it was clear that they were not going to change their mind. So it was very discouraging. The TPLF supporters presented themselves in the TPLF as victims rather than as the aggressors as we know them, which has been also very confusing for us. In fact, one of the witnesses openly said that the statement we made can be seen as blaming the victims. The victims here being the TPLF and supporters. In a way, there was a concerted effort to silence non-TPLF voices at the hearing, which was very discouraging.
And Lambros, what was the effort in terms of trying to separate? I mean, this is something that we see often, is trying to separate the TPLF as a political group and now as an armed rebel group versus the human casualty on the ground in northern Ethiopia, including in Tigray. How are you able to make that separation to an audience that may have already that may already show some bias?
Indeed, it was very difficult because the platform had almost a directive. And that directive was really to exclude other voices so that we can pass the genocide notion and take it to the parliament. That was very clear from the very beginning. As Checo, our responsibility was, and we have to also point out the positive things of this process. I mean, the SDRI, it's a respected committee, and the process at least allows our documents to be documented and become a public document for everybody to see what are the positions of the different groups that they were there. So at least we were able to submit those ones. But was that really heal the wounds that have been created by this misrepresentation? I think the biggest risk here is for the Canadian government to take a very wrong decision of labeling what's happening in the northern region of Ethiopia as genocide. It will really change the dynamics and create a different cascade of accusations of human rights that will complicate the situation in the Horn of Africa. And this is our biggest fear, that one country in North America will start this notion, and then it will be taken this motion in the parliaments of other European countries and really create an unfavorable situation for peace. I would also want to bring to the attention that some of the evidence that was presented there, and we clearly said we empathize with the human pain. We are neighbors, we're people that whoever was the victim and whoever was the victimizer, it doesn't matter. We empathize with this individual facts that, although they were not verified, we had the obligation to empathize with the pain of the people of Tigray and of the people of the region. But they were not challenged. There was no room to challenge the veracity of those evidences that they were presented. Also, they laid some seeds of discord and an intention to vilify whole societies, the Ethiopian society, the Eritrean society, the Eritrean army, the Ethiopian army. From the Eritrean side, I can tell you this: Eritrea has an army that has existed for 7 years. It was consisted from 33% to 50% female population. I mean, the army was to 50% female. For an army that survived and confronted the biggest of the world, Soviet Union, and maybe other challenges, and the composition is female and male, to attack it on its very social fabric and its ethos, it's very severe accusation, and we don't take it lightly as Eritreans. And that's where it really hurt us to have this position unchallenged in a public environment and at the Canadian Parliament. And this is what we would like also to address in the future, because it's also laying the seeds of discord among the people of the Horn of Africa when this becomes a public document and remains unchallenged.
To that point, in your follow-up letter, you warned that these Canadian MPs may be playing something a role that looks like what Belgium played in the Rwandan genocide, and warned that they're falling into a similar path. Can you explain?
Well, we did a follow-up, and we sent a letter to the chair of the committee, Mr. Zuberi, trying to bring to his attention that the process that was followed, it's not going to serve justice either in the Horn of Africa, nor it's going to provide justice to the Canadian public, because the facts are very similar to what had happened in Rwanda, and the processes were not followed, or sometimes even bypassed. And we, in a hope that the Canadian Parliament will learn from the past. I don't want to go into details because it's going to take a little bit more time, but we made it clear also through private discussions with the constituency offices of Mr. Zuberi and the other members of the parliament that there is something fishy in the whole process. There is a political instruction to avoid other voices and pass this resolution through the parliament. And this will be a very sad precedence for the Canadian Parliament.
Dr. Tuit, about that, what Lambros calls, a fishy political element, I did watch some of the hearing and certainly could see some of the hostile environment that you mentioned. How much support is there actually for this effort to get a genocide designation that seems to be perpetuating a narrative that was pushed by the Tigray People's Liberation Front and its supporters. And who are your allies in parliament?
Well, the reason why we wanted to attend this hearing and appear there as witnesses is also when you look at the witnesses' documented testimony in those two hearings, is already pushing the agenda towards genocide designation, Tigray genocide specifically. So that's why we were very much interested to be part of this hearing and bring our views also into the decision. So following the October 28 hearing as well, we became aware of efforts by some members of the subcommittee to designate alleged human rights violations in the conflict in Tigray as genocide committed by one side of the warring parties, which is the Ethiopian National Defense and Allied Forces. And this intent was also reflected on a recent article by Jeffrey York on Globe and Mail, which was very disturbing because that article quotes some of the members of parliament saying there is sufficient evidence now to designate the Tigray situation as a genocide. And as advocates of peace, safety, and human rights in Ethiopia, ECNAS appreciated, we appreciated the SDIR's efforts to protect innocent civilians in the region, and the fact that they're having this investigation and hearing by itself is a testimony to that. However, it is important that the MPs or the subcommittee chair, vice chair, and members have a comprehensive understanding of the genesis and dynamics of this unfortunate conflict, its main actors, and the devastating impacts it inflicted upon Ethiopians, not only in Tigray, but also in Amhara and Afar and other regions as well. So in contrast, rushed and predetermined positions on such a complicated conflict will definitely have unintended consequences of destabilizing the whole of Ethiopia and Horn of Africa, thereby exacerbating the humanitarian crisis, impacting the very civilians that Canada aims to protect. That's why we also wrote a follow-up letter, very strong letter for ECNAS, saying we don't support this, the way this hearing has been handled, and we suggested for the committee to review its processes and give us another opportunity to present our case and bring evidence from the ground, on the ground. So as such, we found this undoubtedly well-intentioned hearing has it could result in negative unintended outcomes, which we are trying to avoid as Canadians. We know one of the values of Canada and the Canadian Parliament is impartiality. So that's why we have been pushing for this committee to consider giving equal opportunity for all the different views of Ethiopians, because Ethiopia has diverse groups of Ethiopians or people that represent the country Ethiopia. So it's not just one group of people, which is 5 or 6% of the total population, that could speak and somehow lead to a decision that would affect more than 110 or 120 million people of the country.
Do you have a sense of whether this is a fringe effort or if there is really support to get a designation like this? Either one of you can answer that. Dr. Tuwitz, can you answer?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Do you have a sense of whether this is a fringe effort to get the genocide designation, or if there is actually support to be able to push this through?
So I think the way this committee works is once they conclude their investigation, they will be making a recommendation to the higher committee or the standing committee on international development and human rights group, and that group will take it up further to the parliament. But maybe Mr. Lambros could have a better explanation of the process. But if it's decided here, then the chances that it might be moved up in the ladder for a higher decision is a possibility. That's why we have been very worried and trying to stop this from happening.
Lambros, one of the things I noticed is when you look at the date of the last hearing, it was less than a week later that there was actually a peace deal signed in South Africa between the Ethiopian government and representatives of the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Do you think that this will change anything in Parliament, and what's next for you, for your organizations?
Well, yes. Well, what we have noticed is that Canada has been very hesitant to condemn the perpetrators in the Horn of Africa. We repeatedly said that there was an unprovoked attack against Eritrea with 15 missiles on November 4th. We also tried to provide some evidence that the genocide claim was actually, it happened almost at the same time that this war was starting. So without having the genocide happening, there was a claim in process. I always remember a phrase that Cohen said, Herman Cohen said that every time that the conflict will go on and Eritrea is involved in any capacity, either in self-defense or any other capacity, Eritrea will be blamed for human rights abuses. So it was preemptively put in a way that no matter what the facts are on the ground, we will get you that way. It looks that the policies in the area have been highly polarized by the geopolitics. And I am not sure if the Canadian government can really avoid that influence and any decision that comes from the geopolitical interests in the area. So there is a balance on the ground that needs to be ratified before the Canadian Parliament can change its position. So we are adding our voices as Canadian Eritreans, but we believe also that the voices of the Horn of Africa and also of the independent Ethiopia that will not be influenced by any pressure will have a determining factor in persuading the Canadian government not to take decisions that will harm the relationships with the Horn of Africa and with the Eritrean people and the Eritrean government too. I think there is a higher political, geopolitical pressure on all this effort. And I believe the MPs themselves are feeling that pressure, that the voices of the people are talking the truth, but the voices of politics are indicating different directions. And there is a conflict between those two positions. So for Eritrean Canadians and Ethiopians, we all have to come together, add our voices, enhance the message of truth, and help the Canadian government, which we honestly believe that this committee genuinely was created to support human rights issues across the world. And in that sense, we need to double our efforts, unite, and keep knocking the doors of the federal MPs in Canada.
Certainly interesting to watch the debates in Parliament and curious to see where this conversation goes next. Lambros Kyriakakos of SECO, Coalition of Eritrean Canadian Communities and Organizations, and Dr. Tuat Asfaw of ECNAS, the Ethio-Canadian Network for Advocacy and Support. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hermela.
All right, you've been watching EOA News in collaboration with Hagara Media. I'm Hermela Aragawi. Stay tuned for more. You can support independent journalism by going to eoanews.com/donate, or you can become a member of my Patreon at patreon.com/HermelaTV. Thanks for tuning in.
Hi, everybody. This is Hermela Aragawi of eoanews.com and on youtube.com/HermelaTV. This video will walk you through how to become a patron of my Patreon account. It's a subscription model. NPR and other publicly funded news outlets use a model like this. It allows the company, the entity, to stay as independent as possible by being viewer funded. So I'll walk you through how to go to patreon.com/HermelaTV, sign up, and then become a monthly member. You'll first go to your browser on your phone or laptop and type in patreon.com/HermelaTV, patreon.com/HermelaTV. This is what the page will look like. You'll then click here where it says become a member. Then it will take you to a sign up page where you'll create a Patreon account that will require your name, your email address, and your new password for this account. So it will then either take you back to this page where you can click become a patron again, or it's possible it will take you to this landing page where on the left side you'll see the option for find creators. Click on that, and in the search box type Hermela TV. My account will show up, then it'll take you to this page. It will default to a monthly contribution of $5, but you can change that to whatever amount you would like. Here are two common issues that people run into. It may ask you for your state, country, and zip code. If it does that, just enter the information and continue on. You also have to go to the email of the email address you use for sign up and verify your account. So go to your email. You'll have gotten an email from Patreon. You have to click verify email address and then return to the browser where you are signing up. Then you will enter your credit card info and click on pay with card, and that's it. And please make sure you pass it around to your friends and family members that you know are interested in supporting independent journalism, particularly independent journalism that tells stories out of Africa from the perspective of the African people. I know a lot of us in Ethiopia, Eritrea, the Horn are celebrating the peace deal that was agreed to last week, but the disinformation in an effort to divide is not going to stop. In fact, we are seeing indications that it is ramping up. So we need to build these independent outlets. We need to scale up. Most of the production that you guys see on my YouTube channel is done by a production team of one, and we can't keep that going for much longer. So we need to hire some editors, some writers, and we need to hire good ones that are, if they don't already understand the general style of news out of Africa and what to look out for, they need to be trained, and we need to get at least part-time people in here, but also full-time to really be able to keep up with the daily news. And hope to see you on patreon.com/HermelaTV.